January ushers in the coldest time of year in Shennongjia's primary forests. This mountainous area, with altitudes reaching over 3,000 meters, spans the western part of Hubei province and is known as the roof of central China. A sudden snowstorm has frozen this place, making it a prisoner of an unstoppable force of nature. The wrath of ice and snow lies heavy on the bamboo that grows high in the mountains, weighing several times their own mass. These dwarf rhododendrons are forced to curl up their leaves before the snowstorm strikes. Fir trees huddle close to each other, forming a shield against the strong wind. While the earth is cold and silent, and everything seems to be asleep, this group of small, blue-faced critters are looking for food deep in the mountains. Compared with plants that are rooted to the spot, snub-nosed monkeys are agile athletes, able to move around with ease. Yet they also face food shortages during the harsh winter. Tree bark has become a staple food for the monkeys, enabling them to survive the long winter. Bitter cold is something the residents of Shennongjia are used to, but surviving these months ruled by ice and snow is still a life or death challenge. Spring arrives right on schedule, and nature begins to awaken. Shennongjia is home for more than 4,000 species of plant, and nearly half of these can only be found in China. Shennongjia's uniqueness makes it a magical paradise for plants. China, the country where Shennongjia is located in, is home to over 35,000 species of plant, accounting for 1/10 of all plant species in the world. Over millions of years, plants have supported countless lives and shaped our homeland into the place it is today. How did plants take root and adapt across the many different climate zones and varied landforms of China, this country towering on the mountainous edge of East Asia? If we condense the 4.6 billion year history of Earth into 24 hours, humans will only appear during the last 3 minutes. What dramatic changes has China witnessed before that time? Let us travel back in time and explore the story of this plant paradise. Around midnight, there were volcanic eruptions. Signs of life started to appear deep in the ocean by 3 or 4 a.m. A more majestic chapter of life started to unfold a little after 6 a.m. One type of cyanobacteria had learned to convert carbon dioxide, water and light into the energy that sustains life, releasing oxygen in the process. This process is called photosynthesis, and it opened the door to the age of plants. By then, the land of China had gradually emerged from the ocean, forming an island. But for a very long time, the land was barren and lifeless. This dry and barren environment was full of rocks that were too hard and too solid to contain water. A little after 9 p.m., that is, about 400 million years ago. some small, low-growing plants started to venture onto dry land. They clung to the rocks using a structure similar to a root system. Moss was one of the first plant pioneers to venture onto land. When they died, their bodies decomposed into fertile soil, which allowed more plants to grow there. From that moment, plants gradually painted the land in shades of green. The land grew livelier after it was inhabited by plants. Insects, which fed on plants, were the first animals to settle on the land. 300 million years ago, dragonflies became the first animals to take to the skies. Plants also longed to reach for the skies. Instead of crawling along the ground, they needed to learn to grow upwards. Pteridophytes were the first to succeed in this endeavour, and one species of them, tree ferns, are among the oldest plants in China. Conductive tissue inside pteridophytes enables them to stand up and also distributes water and nutrients through the plant body. Known as vascular tissues, those tissues are like the blood vessels found in the human body, and they allowed plants to get more light by growing taller, which shaped a world of plants of varying height. For tree ferns, the secret of reproduction is hidden on the underside of their leaves. These neat rows of little spheres contain hundreds of reproductive cells, which are called spores. They are dispersed when they are mature enough to make new plants. The spores must find water if they are to successfully fertilize and reproduce. As the land rose continuously higher, China began to resemble what it looks like today. The climate became drier, bodies of water started to disappear. The enormous forests of pteridophytes that had once existed were gradually supplanted. Plants had to find a way to adapt to this changing environment. Dawn redwoods were one of the survivors of these changes. A critical step in the evolution of plants enabled them to reproduce without having to rely on water. These globe-shaped cones suspended from the branches are the cradles of future generations, the embodiment of the hope for the whole species. The leaves of dawn redwoods turn reddish when autumn comes, and the cones change colour too, as they get ready to leave their parent plant. The first ray of light pierces the darkness and life emerges. The cone cracks open, ushering new lives into the world. What we call seeds are truly among the most amazing products of evolution. A seed is the driest part of a plant. Now it's still asleep. Enclosed in a protective outer casing, with nutrients from the parent plant locked inside, it is ready to embark on its new journey. The wind carries the seed away from its mother out into the great wide world. The seed will encounter harsh weather and an unfavourable environment, and it must endure a very long wait. When the environment is favourable, it is possible for the seed to sprout. A seed that weighs only a few milligrams can grow into a tree tens of meters high. With this proliferation of seed dispersal, China's once dry land became increasingly covered in lush forest. Next, this plant paradise evolved an even more efficient way of reproducing. A plant that existed around 125 million years ago succumbed to the power of time and was eventually turned into a fossil, which was later unearthed in Liaoning Province, China. Scientists discovered the existence of a crucial plant organ, flowers. This ancient specimen was named Archaeofructus liaoningensis and is thought to be one of the oldest undisputed fossils of a flowering plant. Some scientists have described it as the mother of all flowering plants. This Amomum maximum has developed a full reproductive package. Pollen grains carrying sperm cells and nectar to attract pollinators. The first visitor is a bee. The yellow streak on the petal leads it inside the flower. The hair on its body attracts pollen grains which adhere firmly while it collects nectar. The bee will carry pollen grains to another Amomum maximum, thereby facilitating the plant's reproduction. Sometimes flowers need to open wide to embrace more insects, as pollen grains have limited vitality. Accidents can also occur. This thief is using its long mouthparts to pierce through the petal from the outside, stealing nectar but doing nothing for the plant in return. Over time, flowers and insects have achieved a balance of give and take by continuously trying to outwit each other. Insects, which had already existed on the planet for over 200 million years, were given a new purpose by flowering plants. As primary pollinators, the large family of insects continued to thrive. Evolving to collaborate, animals gave flowering plants their strength. They become the ultimate winners of the plant world. China is now home to more than 30,000 flowering plants, flooding every corner of the land with color and making this magnificent plant paradise even more beautiful. As flowering plants continued to thrive, China was preparing to undergo a drastic change. About 65 million years ago, the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate collided, and a new plateau began to rise. Today, this is known as the Tibetan Plateau, or the roof of the world. The average altitude of the Tibetan Plateau is about 4,000 meters. It is home to the world's highest mountain range, the Himalayas. Occupying more than 1/4 of China's land territory, it is also the world's largest plateau. Its formation completely changed the geological structure of China. As the Tibetan Plateau started to rise, the landscape of modern-day China started to take shape, gradually decreasing in elevation from the high mountains in the west to the lowlands in the east. This crisscross of mountain ranges, rolling hills, and vast plains creates a complex landform. The Yellow River and the Yangtze River flow eastward from the Tibetan Plateau, creating a variety of microclimates and habitats along their course. This facilitated an explosive burst of diversity among the plant species in China. The flora of China has entered a new stage. More than 30,000 plant species are native to China and naturally distributed across the land. They include almost all major types of vegetation on Earth: plateaus, deserts, grasslands, and forests. These environments are like different kingdoms. Each kingdom is home to a different ecological environment, supporting different plant distribution and producing plants with different appearances and features. Located in southwest China, the Tibetan Plateau is the highest of all the kingdoms. What kind of magical plants will we find there? The Handkerchief Mountains, towering nearly 5,000 meters above sea level along the southeast border, feature a special landform, scree slopes. These are the product of thousands of years of weathering on the rock face, reducing it into fragments of rock which accumulate on the mountain ranges. But even on this seemingly desolate scree slope, life still finds a way to flourish. Plants take root in the thin soil deep between the broken rocks and emerge out of the cracks. They keep their distance on the slopes. Each facing the world alone, they bring greenery to the roof of China. Located between areas of forest, grassland and ice fields, this grey region is one of the harshest environments on Earth. The average annual temperature is below 0 degrees Celsius and the ground is covered with ice and snow for more than 6 months of the year. There is only a short window of a few months each year, during which everything can recover. When the warm and humid southwest monsoon arrives from the Indian Ocean, summer finally begins. The water vapor condenses and falls as rain. Rain seeps into the cracks between the rocks, nourishing the thirsty roots. But in a place 4,000 or 5,000 meters above sea level, temperatures often drop below 0 even in summer. Sleet soon starts to fall. Covered in dense woolly hairs, Sorceria medusa are able to keep themselves warm. These woolly hairs not only protect against cold, but also protect against excessive rainfall. This is a common feature of this species, which grows at the highest altitude of all flowering plants. In this extreme environment, these small, low-lying plants have managed to conquer life at an altitude that few other plants have reached. The wind clears the sky of clouds, heralding a sunny day. Rising temperatures give flowers their chance to shine. This plant is Sorceria Obvelata, a close relative of Sorceria medusa in the daisy family. It has developed a sort of greenhouse for its flowers, using a semi-transparent calyx, which stores energy from sunlight to speed up the growth of its flowers. The greenhouse also attracts pollinators. This bumblebee flies in to escape from the wind and cold. leaves with ample compensation, and the Sorceria Obvelata's reproduction plan is already halfway to success. The harsh environment of the Tibetan Plateau has reduced the number of pollinators, so the burden falls mainly on the shoulders of bumblebees. Plants grow sparsely on the scree slope, which means the bees must hurry to find their designated flower partners and fulfill their cooperation. With the flowering season drawing to an end, the plants that live on the scree slopes are running out of time. Sorceria medusa only has one chance to flower in their lives. They have been lying under the scree for several years, preparing to ensure they have enough strength to flower. Once they flower, their life cycle enters its final stage. This is a race of life against time. As the temperature continues to drop, a cold wave is about to strike. The Sorceria medusa hides under their woolly coats, protecting their seeds with all the energy they have left. Very few species can survive at altitudes higher than 4,000 meters, this close to the snow line. Among those who have succeeded, the majority have evolved the ability to withstand intense cold and exposure to strong UV rays. Their unique survival strategies have made them the plants closest to the sky. Autumn comes and the mountains become richly colourful. The animals on the plateau's pastures prepare to leave for warmer places at lower altitudes to escape the bitter winter. The first snowfall whitens the scree slope and the land enters its long frozen state. Their seeds have been dispersed across this vast land and are waiting for the day when they will begin their own life's journey. The Tibetan Plateau is not defined by cold alone. There is another world hidden beneath these snowy peaks. The species living here fear the cold and need enough warmth to survive, but they have found their ideal home in the Himalayan foothills. The altitude here is only a few hundred meters above sea level, and it's the place where warm, moist air from the Indian Ocean begins to climb up onto the plateau. Plants here are blessed with abundant water and heat, and the differences between them and their alpine species are striking. The Tibetan Plateau is a vertically distributed plant kingdom. Plants become sparser and hardier as the altitude increases. The towering Himalayas showcase and magnify the diversity of plants. The influence of the Tibetan Plateau is also felt in the other kingdoms. It prevents the bitter cold stream from travelling south, and with the help of the southwest monsoon, has enabled Xishuangbanna Prefecture in Yunnan Province, on the southwest border of China, to become home to a slice of virgin tropical rainforest. This is one of the densest forests on Earth and accommodates around 1/6 of all the plant species found in China. This beetle has been eyeing a giant taro leaf for quite some time. It looks like it's ready to feast. But this dinner could cost the beetle its life. Giant taros are poisonous plants. They can transfer toxins through their veins to the part of the leaf that is being bitten, killing those who dare to eat them. The forest is a place teeming with danger. But this beetle has a way to counteract this threat. It bites through the veins on the leaf to cut off the supply of toxins. It can now enjoy a juicy meal. When it comes to food, species have evolved in astonishing ways. In this battle against the beetle, the giant taro's defences are completely ineffective. In this tropical rainforest, competition between different species has driven their respective evolution. This is what has made our world so varied, changeable, and filled with such extraordinary splendour. The sun is setting, and some plants start to close their leaves, a behaviour triggered by their light-sensitive biological clocks. As night advances, the forest becomes noisier. Some insects start to emerge from their pupal cases, marking their new adulthood. The weather here is always warm, and the species that live here grow and reproduce at an accelerated pace. They need to seize their moment and bloom to the full. There are roughly 4,000 flowering plants in this rainforest, and every one of them has evolved their own special skill to win in this contest of looks and taste. The forest welcomes a new day. This 80-metre tall Sorceria chinensis, which is almost as tall as a 25-storey building, is the first plant in the whole forest to embrace the sunshine. Their height allows them to absorb more energy from the light through more efficient photosynthesis, giving them a huge advantage over the other tree species in the rainforest. Light penetrates the dense canopy and filters down to the ground, waking up the entire forest. A tropical region is never short of light, so this rainforest has an abundance of plant species, but it also means that competition for space is fierce. Every species has to fight for its territory. The rainforest kingdom is the richest source of life, but it is also the most ruthless battlefield. This tree is dying, its life being slowly drained by another plant. The killer is an epiphytic tree called Ficus Subbulata, a type of banyan tree. Its seeds quietly germinate on the surface of this big tree, where it acquires nutrients from the air to strengthen itself. Now it has grown big enough. The plant is armed with aerial roots, which dangle extraordinarily in mid-air. As they grow down, they entwine around the stem of the host. The plant's growth accelerates once the roots reach the ground, and the Ficus Subbulata is able to establish its own independent root system, blocking the host's own source of nutrients. As the epiphytic plant grows stronger, the host is rendered weaker and more defenseless against the other animals, plants, and fungi that feed on it, which quickens its death. In the end, the strangler lives on without its host. Banyan trees are the only ones with the power to strangle other plants in Sichuan, but they rarely target healthy trees. To the weak, banyan trees are killers. But actually they play a key role in maintaining the overall health of the forest. Water and soil accumulate on the canopy formed by their branches, which becomes the home to other epiphytes, forming a garden in the air. In this dense rainforest, these plants act as the Earth's lungs, releasing large amounts of oxygen and maintaining the balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The day after the powder puff tree blooms, its flowers start falling to the ground. A beautiful blossom is a fleeting thing, but the journey of new life begins here. Insects have emerged from their pupal cases as adults. But growing up is even tougher for young seedlings in the rainforest. They have to wait until one of the surrounding adult trees dies to make room for their own growth. The never-ending cycle of life and death comes full circle. The long rainy season arrives. Now it is time for plants to grow, ready for more challenges that await them in the unknown future. In China, rainforests like the one in Sichuan are also found in Hainan, the south of Taiwan, and parts of southeastern Tibet. As plants engage in fierce competition in the rainforest, northwest China presents a completely different scene. Xinjiang is the driest province in China. Strong winds gradually eroded the rocks here, shaping them into these extraordinary Yardang landforms. The ravines between the mounds are the product of intense geological changes. Tens of millions of years ago, this place was a wetland. Abundant rainfall and a humid climate made it home to lush forests. The rise of the Tibetan Plateau blocked the passage of warm, moist air from the southeast. The climate became drier and the landscape of northwest China was changed forever. Forests disappeared. Yellow sand replaced the wetlands, gradually forming deserts. The Gaban Tunggu Desert in northern Xinjiang is the place on Earth that is remotest from the open sea. In the desert, water becomes the most valuable resource. But this place is not lifeless. More than 100 species of plants grow in this desert, which occupies an area approximately 50,000 square kilometers. This is a young Saxel. It will remain leafless its whole life, a feature passed down by its ancestors. To survive in the desert, Saxels use their thin, soft shoots instead of leaves to perform photosynthesis to better conserve water. When autumn comes, Saxels enter hibernation, preparing themselves for the cold winter. The wind is blowing. It helps disperse the pollen and seeds of desert plants, but is also the harbinger of death for some. This Saxel has lived for decades. The wind has blown away the sand at its base, exposing its roots, which are more than 10 meters long. Its roots once grew deep into the ground in search of water. But now, the roots have withered. Each crack on its body is a wound left by its long battle against the wind. The well-developed roots of a Saxel can hold more than 10 square meters of earth. When they grow in groups, they can block sandstorms and stop sand dunes from shifting. Plants that grow deep in the desert are on their own. This old Saxel has stopped transferring water to its shoots and let them wither. It has reduced its need for water to the lowest possible level, directing all the nutrients and water to its roots. As long as the roots are alive, then with just a little water, it can regain its life force. Saxels are defined by their resilience. When this Saxel was still a seed, it germinated within hours using just the tiniest bit of moisture in the soil. It craves water, but it is not demanding. However hostile their environment, desert plants can always find a way to absorb nutrients from the soil and survive. The desert land in the northwest region and the Gobi Desert occupy around 1/8 of the land in China. Hundreds of types of desert plants live here. They safeguard their homeland with their high drought tolerance and maintain the ecological balance of nature. To the east of the desert kingdom lies the temperate grassland, where the climate ranges from semi-arid to semi-humid. This area is dominated by herbaceous plants and a small number of shrubs. In the eastern part of China, influenced by the East Asian monsoon, temperatures rise and rainfall increases further to the south, allowing different types of forests to grow. The region, bisected by the 30th parallel north, is home to China's most unusual subtropical evergreen broad-leaved forest. Its uniqueness lies in the fact that other regions of the world at this latitude are almost all deserts or grasslands. This lush forest habitat was also a product of the rise of the Tibetan Plateau, which changed the atmospheric circulation patterns over Asia and strengthened the southeast monsoon coming from the Pacific Ocean. The climate was transformed into a subtropical monsoon climate, and this formerly barren land was transformed into a lush, verdant kingdom of plants. A very special species of tree grows here, the handkerchief or dove tree. This tree has evolved bracts, which are modified leaves. The green bracts start turning yellowish white at the point where the flowers develop. The white bracts dangle from the tree, eager to attract passing insects. Western botanists call them dove trees from China and introduce them to their native countries. These dove trees drew the world's attention not only because of their beautiful flowers, but because of their unique history. This species has existed since prehistoric times and once flourished in the Northern Hemisphere. But the environment changed over 2 million years ago. Temperatures plummeted, and a third of the Earth's surface was covered with ice and snow. The extreme cold wiped many forests out, many tree species died, or even became extinct. This period is known as the Quaternary Glaciation. The complex terrain and towering mountains of China stopped the ice sheets encroaching from the north and made China into a safe haven for many species. When the Ice Age ended, the climate grew warmer and spring returned once again. The dove trees that took shelter in China survived, carrying forward the genes of their ancestors. These plants were once seen all over the world, but now their numbers have greatly declined, and the survivors only exist in a very small area. People call them plant relics or precious living fossils. Hundreds of such relics exist in China. The Quaternary Glaciation had yet another important influence on China. Cold, dry winds deposited sediment from the northwest in the middle of the Yellow River, forming the Loess Plateau. The Loess layers average 80 meters in thickness. At this very place, plants made contact with a new species, the human race. About 10,000 years ago, our early ancestors began to cultivate and cook wild plants. After 1,000 years of experimentation, people cultivated ji, the Chinese name for millet cereal crops. With drought tolerance inherited from its ancestors, millet was extensively grown in North China. The yellow soil gave it life. The Yellow River nourished it as it passed. This domesticated plant produces golden ears of grain, and it has been the most important source of food in northern China for millennia. At almost the same time, rice cultivation began along the Yangtze River in southern China. In contrast to the dry north, the south is warm and humid, and rice production thrived here along the river. Two very different agricultural methods appeared simultaneously in China. From the first random experiments with wild plants to controlled cultivation, humans and plants have changed each other's fates. Humans began to schedule their lives according to the life cycle of cultivated plants. They abandoned their roaming lifestyle as hunter-gatherers and learned to plough, plant, and harvest at the right time. Plants helped humans to settle and travelled with humans when they moved. Humans and plants have been inseparable ever since. After that, plants were gradually domesticated by our ancestors. 8,000 years ago, people started to grow soybeans as a source of food. 7,000 years ago, mulberry leaves began to be cultivated, which paved the way for the silk industry. 4,000 years ago, peaches and mandarins started appearing on people's dinner tables. 2,000 years ago, tea plants were domesticated, and tea is still enjoyed by millions today. From food and clothes to shelter, medicine and cosmetics, this abundant plant paradise has nurtured and accompanied the birth of Chinese civilization. This plant paradise has not only shaped China, but has also influenced the entire world. These plants continue to influence us today.